This is your Friday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Plenty to get to today. We'll have Mark Craig on in just a little bit for his weekly NFL picks segment, best and worst of the Vikings and Bears over the long haul. I've got some thoughts on that. Mark picks all the games as well, so looking forward to that. Little Timberwolves discussion, too. Now, they face the Lakers on Friday night. At least they are scheduled to at the moment. A lot of COVID problems for the Lakers. A lot of COVID problems in sports in general right now. So we'll see how that all shakes out. But first, what did I miss? I want to focus on a pair of overtime games from Thursday night that I was, kind of channel flipping, things like that. And kind of on the opposite end of the entertainment spectrum. Wild loses to Buffalo 3-2 in a shootout, and the Chiefs beat the Chargers 34-28 in overtime in the NFL. Well, let's start with the Wild. Every team's going to have, a lull here and there. The Wild really hasn't had an extended lull under Dean Evason, an amazing stat that I read in Sarah McClellan's game story. This is the first time Dean Evason's been coaching this team for 97 games, spanning parts of 3 seasons. Of course, he took over a couple seasons ago at the end of the year when Bruce Boudreau was let go, coached all of last season, that 56-game shortened year, and then 29 more games this season. This is the first time the Wild has lost 3 regular season games in a row under Dean Evason. They lost the 2 on the road. They were supposed to play Tuesday against Carolina. That game postponed because of Carolina's COVID issues. And they come back and play Buffalo, not a good team. And maybe they kind of got complacent in this game. Back at Xcel Energy Center, maybe they thought this was going to be a walkover win. And, frankly, like Dean Evason said, we'll get to some of his comments in a minute, they were kind of lucky just to get a point. They were actually ahead 2-1 in this game, had no business being ahead 2-1 because Buffalo was severely outshooting and outplaying them into the third period. And Cam Talbot had to make a number of big saves in net for the Wild just to keep this one within reach. And actually, Wild led 1-0 after 1, and I believe it was 2-1 after 2. Buffalo gets the equalizer in the third that it probably deserved and got a shootout win at the end. So, not really a cause for alarm, I guess, but they did schedule a Friday practice. I don't know if they probably would have done that had the performance Thursday been a little bit better. Now, here is Dean Evason, head coach of the Wild, after the game on what he did not like from what he saw.
Yeah, we weren't good. We weren't good right from the start. We weren't good in the middle. We weren't good at the end. I guess, we just, all of us, we weren't very good. We talked about maybe we need, we've talked before about maybe we need some practice. We need some practice. Our pace was just terrible. They had pace. They played hard. Credit to them for sure. But we didn't have anything tonight. We respect that hockey club. We just didn't have anything. Like our game mentally, physically. We had no legs, but we didn't push either. And there's some guys on the bench, trying and talking and trying to get us to go north and to push the pace and to do, and it just. But no, I don't. I think they took the game away from us, in large chunks here tonight. So, that certainly didn't look like our hockey club, right?
And again, not a reason for panic, I don't think. Still a team that's 19-8-2 overall. Just need to shore some things up. I think John Merrill said after the game, once you win a few in a row, you get a little complacent. Maybe some of the things that are problems in those wins kind of get glossed over, and they need to kind of go back to work and get things going again. And they probably have to do it without Jared Spurgeon for a little while. Sounded like he re-aggravated his injury in that game. So there's going to be some adversity here for the Wild. I guess better now than much later in the year. Maybe they can figure this out right now and kind of learn some lessons as they go forward. Flip side was Chargers and Kansas City. I thought both teams played really well. Chargers very aggressive. I almost said San Diego. I'm going to eternally say San Diego Chargers. That's just how I grew up. Chargers were aggressive, missed a bunch of fourth downs. Here's the thing. They were taking a bunch of heat after the game for going for it a few times on fourth down and not making it, even though statistical models showed that every time it was the correct decision. If you're going to be aggressive, sure, you subject yourself to some second guessing, but also the second guessers should back off a little bit because if it's the right decision, it's not an outcome-based thing. You should be trusting the process and not the result in this case. I thought the Chargers were smart to go for it deep in Kansas City territory. Even though it didn't quite work out for them, the game was still right there for them. You're not going to beat a team like Kansas City with field goals. You're just not. So I like the aggressive approach, even though it didn't work out. Kansas City just too much. Patrick Mahomes finding Travis Kelce over the middle, and a beautiful catch and run by Kelce to finish that game off for Kansas City, really opening up a 2-game lead now in the AFC West. So an entertaining game, and don't rip a team just because they're aggressive when the aggressive moves don't pay off.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake for 24/7 gaming, fun restaurants and bars, and luxurious hotel rooms. And join Club M to bask in the rewards. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
NFL picks time with Mark Craig. We got a lot of good ones this week, including some Saturday games. Kind of like this point in the year where the college football season is into the bowl season, so the NFL takes over some Saturdays as well. Gotta make that money. Gotta crank out more TV slots for the NFL, and then obviously Monday night, Vikings at Bears, important game for them. Understatement in terms of their playoff hopes. If they don't win that one, playoffs pretty much out of reach for all practical purposes. Mark, how you doing?
Doing well. Yeah, I'm looking forward to Saturday games. Watching what's left of the Cleveland Browns try to make a playoff push here.
Yeah, we'll get to that game in a minute. We always like to start with the Vikings, even though that's the last game of the week this week instead of the first game, as it was when they played the Steelers and almost gave back all of a 29-0 lead, but didn't. Stayed alive in what is a pretty weak bottom part of the NFC, pretty top heavy. I think there's 5 teams that are at least 9-4 right now, pretty well secure in the playoffs, especially after the Rams beat the Cardinals last week, just a few days ago. But how do you see this matchup with the Vikings and Bears? I mean, COVID is wreaking havoc on a lot of different NFL teams. It looks like both of these teams have not escaped it in any way, shape, or form, and the Bears were already struggling before that. But just for whatever is left on the field Monday night, how do you see this game shaking out?
I think the Vikings are going to be able to score points. I mean, if you look at the road games, they're actually scoring more points on the road than they are at home. The Bears aren't really. I don't see the dominant defense. I mean, Hicks up front is going to be a problem, but I see the Vikings being able to outscore them, and the defense being able to hold them off. And but as we were joking in the press box when it was 26-0, we looked at each other and said from last week and said, this couldn't come down to the last play, could it? They're like laughing. We're all writing. So I would expect a close game. Naturally, I would expect Justin Fields to have the ball and be scrambling all over the place at the end of the game. But I like them. I like the Vikings' ability, A, to score points, and B, confuse this quarterback, this young quarterback, enough in their first meeting with him to win the game.
Now, at the start of the year, the narrative was that maybe the Vikings weren't going to get the Bears at the best time because Fields would have had, most of a rookie season to kind of settle in. And it's been a little bit up and down. There's been, he's played, Andy Dalton's played some. What's he doing well when you watch the Bears?
Well, I mean, unlike we saw Thursday night, and especially the first 32 minutes or whatever, the Vikings could go after Ben Roethlisberger, knowing that Ben was going to be in that one spot and he wasn't going to move. Although he did run for a first down and kind of lumbered and fell forward for a first down one time. But this is a totally different animal in that, you can confuse him, you can rush him, but he can turn a bad play into a good play with his legs. Whereas, Roethlisberger couldn't do that until they did they turned that game around because they went to max protect, and then the receivers downfield beat the Vikings secondary. So with this guy, you got to rush him, but you got to probably have a spy to make sure he doesn't hurt you that way. I don't think that he can do it enough over 4 quarters to hurt you that way. He's going to have to pass the ball. That being said, there's certainly, if they don't get a pass rush, the Brelands and different Dantzlers, could be a problem in coverage. But, he's a guy that when things break down, he can make a good play out of a bad play.
This is a opponent and specifically a location that has been the site of a lot of memorable, weird, people might call it, games. When the Vikings go to Soldier Field, strange things tend to happen. Now, they did win there a season ago, but no fans in the stands for that one, obviously. They won there in 2017. They did win there in 2015. So when they win at Soldier Field, a lot of times they do. It is in the midst of a playoff season, but is this just a matter of how our memory works, or is this truly a place where just for whatever reason, weird things happen and the Vikings kind of can't seem to get out of their own way sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, Andrew and Ben were talking about it earlier. I'm remembering different things, and I go back farther than they do. And one of the, when Peanut Tillman went up in the end zone, a 50-50 ball in the end zone, this is when Randy Moss has had his whole career, basically, when he was at Hall of Fame level. But it was the first time we'd ever seen, and maybe the last time we'd ever seen, someone moss Randy Moss. And he went up and he pulled that ball out of his hands. We're like, wow, we didn't see that coming. I believe they lost that game, whichever year it was. But yeah, Tice, about a tough guy town. You got to learn how to win in a tough guy town and all this stuff. But yeah, a lot of weird things happen. You see a lot of that when division opponents, like doesn't get much weirder than the Vikings losing to the Lions, when they don't have a win. But you see different things like that when division opponents are so familiar with each other. And the Bears typically have a defense that can frustrate you. But yeah, it's a lot of weird things. Zimmer poking his eye, and that's when his eye problems began. And Norv gets fired, or Norv quits the next morning. So yeah, it's a lot of weird things. There's a lot going on the other sideline. I mean, these are probably, they're officially the two hottest seats probably in the NFL now that Urban Meyer's finally been relieved. So both teams have some issues they got to work through. The Vikings had the advantage, I think, in that, they're still playing for the playoffs. And, they beat the Packers. They almost came down to the last play, a 37-yard field goal to beat Cardinals that they didn't make. So there's a feeling, I'm sure, in that building that if they can sneak in, they can upset one of these two teams.
What is your kind of confidence level? We'll move on to some other games here in a minute, but as you think about the Vikings, not just in this game, but playing the Bears twice, and then they got the Rams at US Bank Stadium and at Green Bay. Winning 3 out of those 4 gives them a pretty good chance to make the playoffs. What is based on the 13 games you've seen so far this season, what is your confidence level that they can put together 3 wins in 4 games when they need to?
Yeah, I think they can do it. It would be a sort of like I know that we had this feeling in 2012. But granted, they had a 2,000-yard rusher, but they also had Christian Ponder at quarterback. And I remember someone, all these players say the same things. But this time they were 6-6, I believe. They absolutely had to win their last 4 games, I believe, and they did it. And you look at this year. This is only the third time since 1978 where there's no playoff teams have clinched yet so far. So you're seeing a lot of strange this late into the season. But you're seeing a lot of strange, evenly matched, or when you see a lot of teams with losing records beat teams that are leading their division. So yeah, they can do it, but they could also go 0-4. They could, the Packers are probably going to beat them. So the winning 3 might be more likely if they can do it. But like the Rams, not sold on the Rams. Especially if they have to play at US Bank Stadium with the crowd going. But yeah, those 2 Bear games, they should win. They should actually, if you look at all these 6 and 7 teams that are playing, they should come out of this weekend, the Monday night, being 7th in the NFC.
Speaking of the rest of the slate, the Saturday games are actually pretty interesting. Raiders at Browns, Patriots at Colts. Raiders, Browns having all sorts of COVID issues, and Patriots, Colts, just kind of interesting, with Colts kind of being a up and down team this season, but a team that can kind of play with anybody as well. How do you see both of those games shaken out?
Yeah, I mean, last time the Browns were decimated by COVID, they went to Pittsburgh without their head coach and without bunch of players, and they won their first playoff game since 1994. I just have one of those feelings that, when it gets to the extreme, the people that step in behind them, especially if they end up not having Baker Mayfield, Case Keenum, I'd almost want to have him go into a key game right now over Baker Mayfield. So I picked the Browns in that one. The Patriots and the Colts, I'm not buying the Patriots as an underdog, even though it's at the Colts. The Patriots have won, 6 in a row. They're coming off a bye, just like the Colts are. I'll roll with Belichick with an extra week over Reich. So, I think the Patriots right now are the best team in the league, and they're the best coach team in the league. And I don't see any reason that they're going to go backwards.
Game with interest to Vikings fans, Falcons at 49ers. Probably better for the Vikings that I'm not sure who would the Vikings want to win that game. Falcons are 6-7 right now. San Francisco 7-6, but holding a tiebreaker over the Vikings should it get that far. You like the Niners in this game, and they are pretty big favorites. But I would imagine that having them come back to the pack and trying to have 2 wild card spots open and not just one would be potentially better. But then again, it might come down to just getting that 9th win no matter what.
Yeah, the tiebreaker there with the few games left makes me think that you want to try and go for that 7. I mean, obviously you want to try and get to 6, but the first priority would be to get 7 and to kind of start wiping some of these teams aside out of the 7 spot. Let the 49ers go on their way with the 6th one for now, and get the Falcons beat, get Washington beat, and then you'd move ahead of Philadelphia, so you would go to the 7th spot in that scenario, and then once you get to the 7, you just got to win, and it's up to you. You control it, whereas trying to chase the 49ers and you end up tying the 49ers. The 49ers are another team it's up and down. I mean, all these teams muddling about at the bottom there are teams that, could go either way. Washington, look what they did 4 straight weeks. They were back in it. And then last week they looked awful, terrible offensively. So yeah, to me, just get in and see what you can do.
Another one of those games with implications. You just referenced Washington. They are at the Eagles. Believe both of those teams are 6-7 going into that game as well. So someone's got to win, but someone's also got to lose in that case. You like the Eagles. I think the Eagles are probably just a better overall team. Washington maybe overachieved to get to that point. So I think that's probably a pretty solid guess, especially if Washington just has a feel of the kind of team that's going to fade here down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, Washington, the quarterback's beat up, and now Philadelphia, their quarterback's getting healthier and getting better. 2 not very good teams, and the Eagles have only won, I think, 1 game at home. So yeah, I like the Eagles, but Washington's defense could carry them. It couldn't carry them against the Cowboys, but it could certainly carry them against the Eagles.
Last one I want to talk about, Packers, Ravens, Lamar Jackson status, a little bit unclear. He's not playing perfect football this year either way, and Aaron Rodgers is playing at a pretty high level. You like the Packers in that one? I think I have to agree, even though that one is in Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, it's if Jackson plays, it's a matchup of the past 2 MVPs. Lamar Jackson can surprise you. He can do a lot of great things, but if you're just looking for a steady guy at this time of year, go with it. I'd go with Aaron Rodgers every day to just be more steady and be more, you know what you're going to get with him. And with Lamar Jackson, you just can be up and down. And, he throws 4 interceptions against the Browns and he wins a few weeks ago. To me, it's I go with the steadier quarterback. They're both great. They're totally different players, but give me Aaron Rodgers any day on that one.
I lied. I have one more because your upset special is Seattle over the Rams. This is seems like one of your classic overcorrection games, right? Because everyone's kind of back with the Rams now after they beat the Cardinals, and so something's got to come down on them, right?
Yeah, because we're all back. We're all in on the Rams again. So it's time for that bandwagon to tip over again. Plus Seattle, Seattle's with the injury to Russell Wilson this year. He's back. He's won 2 in a row. Both these teams have won 2 in a row, and they've combined to win score like 130 points. So it's probably going to be a high scoring game. But yeah, the Rams should win. But this has an NFL feel to it where the Rams are going to have to. I don't think they're going to get that number 1 seed, and this would be a damaging blow to them if they couldn't win this game.
Well, we'll see how it all shakes out, especially Monday night in Chicago. Mark Craig, enjoy the rest of the week. We'll catch you next week, okay?
All right, thanks, Michael.
Mark referenced that game between the Bears and Vikings where Charles Tillman intercepted a pass intended for Randy Moss. I was at that game, went back and looked. That was indeed 2003, the year where everything fell apart for the Vikings. If you don't remember, they were 6-0 to start that season, and then things did not go well. They lost to every single 4-12 team in the NFL that year. Lost to the Cardinals, of course, on the final play of the season to knock them out of the playoffs. But that Bears game was December 14th, 2 weeks before that Cardinals game. Had Randy Moss hauled that pass in, I think they still would have been able to salvage a playoff spot. So don't put it all on that Cardinals game. That 13-10 loss at the Bears, December 14th. I was there. It was cold. There was an obnoxious Bears fan just screaming, "Peanut, Peanut," Charles Tillman's nickname, throughout the entirety of our long walk back to the car. And so there you have it. That was 18 years ago, a hall of horrors often for the Vikings traveling to Chicago. We'll see if it's any better on Monday night this week. Let's finish with the cooler. Lakers at Wolves Friday night. Not as many Lakers in the lineup as we might have thought, though. 4 of them in COVID protocols, with Russell Westbrook joining teammates in that status. We've talked about COVID in sports. It kind of hit a lull for a while there over the summer and even into the fall. There was some discussion, but it didn't feel like it was flaring up so constantly. It has been dominating sports this last week, and I'm worried about kind of what the next 2-3 weeks are going to be like, even as leagues are going to enhanced protocols. It feels like we are in the midst of, it kind of feels like we're right back where we were a year ago, even though we have the vaccines now that are helping quite a bit. So it will be interesting to see how the rest of these seasons play out. It seems like the NFL is determined to play through it. Wonder if the NBA and NHL are going to take the same approach. But it's beginning to feel a lot like last year at this time, and that's not a good thing. That'll do it for today and this week. Back at it on Monday with Patrick Royce. Tuesday's show should be a good one as well, coming off of that Monday night game between the Vikings and the Bears. Have a great weekend. I'm Michael Rand. See you again on Monday.